The day my son stopped calling me Mom, he did not shout. He did not argue. He did not even look angry. He just said my name. Not Mom, not Ma, just my name. I remember standing in my kitchen when it happened. The kettle was still warm. The window was half open. Outside, the sky was gray, like it could not decide whether to rain or stay quiet. "Can you move your bag?" he said. He used my name. So calm, so polite, and something inside me went very still. I smiled, I nodded, I moved my bag. I did not cry. Not then, because sometimes when pain is too big, it does not come out as tears. It sits, it waits. That night I lay awake, listening to the clock on the wall. Tick, tick, tick. I kept thinking, when did I stop being his mother? I raised that boy. I held him when he was sick. I stayed up nights when he had fevers. I packed his lunches. I washed his clothes. I prayed for him when he walked out the door. And now he used my name. This is not a story about anger. It is not a story about blame. It is a story about distance, about silence, about how love can slowly change shape without anyone noticing, and how one word can tell you everything you are afraid to hear. I had only one son. When he was born, the nurse placed him in my arms and said, "He is strong." He was small, red, and crying, but to me, he was the whole world. I called him my miracle, not because life was perfect, but because love made it feel possible. His father worked long hours, sometimes too long, sometimes too far away, so it was often just me and my boy. We grew together. Quiet mornings, shared meals, simple routines. I used to wake him for school by brushing his hair back and whispering, "Time to get up, my sunshine." He would groan and pull the blanket over his head, then smile. Those were good years. Not rich years, just warm ones. When he left for college, I cried into his pillow the first night. I told myself it was normal. Mothers cry, sons grow. He still called me then, every few days, sometimes just to say, "Hi, Mom, I'm okay." Those were my favorite words. Then he met her. She was polite, soft-spoken, very careful with her words. I welcomed her. I truly did. I cooked her favorite meals, once I learned them. I gave her space. I tried not to interfere. I believed love meant stepping back. At their wedding, I cried happy tears. I hugged my son and said, "You chose well." He said, "Thank you, Mom." I did not know that would slowly change. The first change was not a fight. It was silence. The phone rang less, messages came later, replies became shorter. "Busy," he would say. "Work is a lot." I understood. Life happens. When I visited, things felt careful, like I was a guest instead of family. The kitchen no longer smelled like my food. The house was quiet in a different way. I started watching my words. I stopped giving advice unless asked. I stopped telling old stories. I laughed softly instead of loudly. One day I called him my boy, like I always had. He smiled, but his eyes shifted. Later, he said gently, "Mom, maybe don't say that anymore." I nodded. I swallowed. Love, I told myself, means adjusting. But slowly, my place became smaller. I told myself not to notice the small things, but small things have a way of becoming heavy when they pile up. He stopped asking how I was. He stopped sharing little details, the kind that used to fill our calls. No more, "Mom, guess what happened today?" Now it was just, "Yes, no, I'll call you later." Sometimes later never came. When I visited, I arrived with gifts. Nothing big, just homemade food, a folded sweater, things mothers bring because they do not know how else to say, "I still care." She would thank me, kindly, politely, but the gifts stayed untouched. I started sitting with my hands folded in my lap, waiting to be useful, waiting not to be in the way. One evening, I offered to help in the kitchen. She smiled and said, "It's okay, I've got it." I stepped back. I always stepped back. At night, I lay awake in the guest room, listening to their voices behind a closed door, not arguing, just living. And somehow that hurt more. The first time he used my name instead of Mom, I pretended not to notice. "Can you pass the salt?" he said. My name landed softly, like it didn't mean anything, but it did. I passed the salt. I smiled. Inside, something loosened. I told myself, maybe it was an accident. The second time, it stayed. "Did you bring your coat?" My name again. I looked at him. He avoided my eyes. I nodded. That night, I whispered into my pillow, "It's okay. He still loves you." I repeated it until I believed it, or until I fell asleep. Family gatherings changed. I used to sit beside him. Now there was always something in between. A phone, a plate, another person. Conversations moved around me. I listened more than I spoke. I smiled when others laughed. Sometimes I would start a sentence and it would fade before the end. No one noticed. I became very good at being quiet. Once I heard him say to someone, "She's old-fashioned." He did not say it with cruelty, just fact, but it felt like being folded into a small box and placed on a shelf. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. I had cooked his favorite dish, the one he loved as a child. I placed it on the table, warm, careful. He looked at it and said, "Oh, you didn't have to do that." Not "thank you," not "Mom," just that. I smiled and said, "I wanted to," but my voice felt far away. Later, as they cleaned up, I sat alone at the table. I traced the edge of my plate with my finger. The house felt quiet again. And that's when I realized something painful. I was no longer needed, and worse, I was no longer wanted. The turning point did not come with shouting. It came with a letter. A simple envelope, my name written neatly. Inside were words chosen carefully, too carefully. They said they needed space. They said it was healthier. They said it was not personal. Nothing feels more personal than being asked to step away. My hands shook as I folded the paper. That evening, I packed my bag. I moved slowly, quietly. When I stood by the door, he said my name again. "Take care." I looked at him. I wanted to say so many things. Instead, I said, "I always do," and I left. When the door closed behind me, there was no loud sound, just a soft click. I stood outside for a moment, holding my bag, listening to the quiet. I did not rush away. I needed one more second to accept what had just happened. Then I walked to the bus stop. The sky was pale, not sad, not bright, just there. I sat by the window and watched houses pass by, each one holding a life I didn't know. I kept thinking, how did we get here? There was no fight, no harsh words, just distance. That kind of distance is harder because you can't point to one moment and say, this is where it broke. My house felt smaller than before. Dust sat quietly on the shelves. The clock sounded louder. I placed my bag down and stood in the middle of the room. No one asked if I was tired. No one asked if I ate. I made tea for myself. I sat at the table alone and held the warm cup with both hands. That night I did not cry. I just stared at the wall. Sometimes pain is too tired to cry. In the days that followed, memories came without warning. I would open a drawer and find his old school papers. I would hear a laugh on the street and turn around. I remembered his small hand in mine, how he used to say, "Mom, don't let go." I wondered when I had let go, or maybe when he stopped holding on. Days passed, then weeks. I kept my phone close, too close. Every sound made my heart jump, but it was never him. I wanted to call. I wanted to ask, did I do something wrong? But the letter said they needed space, so I stayed silent, because mothers often believe their love must wait quietly. One evening, I spoke out loud. "I am still his mother," I said to the room. The room did not answer. That's when the question finally formed clearly in my mind. Was being a mother something that could expire, or was it something that stayed, even when no one asked for it anymore. I did not have the answer yet, but I was getting closer. Something changed slowly. Not anger, not bitterness, just acceptance. I stopped waiting by the phone. I started walking in the mornings, slow steps, quiet thoughts. I cooked meals for myself again, simple ones. I started writing letters I never sent, not to accuse, not to beg, just to remember who I was. One afternoon, while folding laundry, it came to me. I had spent so much time trying not to be in the way that I had forgotten I was allowed to exist. I had shrunk myself so others would feel comfortable, but love should not require disappearing. That realization did not hurt. It healed. Weeks later, my phone rang. It was him. I did not answer right away. I took a breath, then I picked up. He said my name. Not Mom, just my name. And somehow, this time, it did not break me. When I answered the phone, I did not rush to speak. I let the silence breathe. "Hi," he said. His voice sounded older, not tired, just different. "Hi," I replied. We stayed quiet for a moment, not uncomfortable, just careful. Then he spoke again. "I hope you're doing okay." I smiled softly. "I am," I said, and for the first time, it was true. He hesitated. I could hear it in the pause. "We've been busy," he said. "Things got complicated." I did not interrupt. He went on. "I didn't mean to hurt you." Those words landed gently, not as an apology, but as honesty. "I know," I said, and I did know. There was a time when I would have cried then, a time when my voice would have shaken, but now I felt steady. "I just want you to know something," I said. "I never needed to be the center of your life." He stayed silent. I only needed to know I still mattered. I did not accuse. I did not raise my voice. I spoke like a woman who had finally found her footing. "I was afraid," I continued, "that if I spoke, I would lose you completely." His breath caught, just slightly. "I didn't realize," he said, and I believed him. We talked for a long time, about life, about pressure, about learning how to balance love. He told me he did not stop loving me, he just did not know how to hold everyone at once. I told him I understood, because I did. Sometimes people do not pull away because they don't care, they pull away because they don't know how to stay. Before hanging up, he paused. "Mom," he said. Just once. My eyes closed. I did not cry. I smiled. "Take care of yourself," he added. "I always do," I said. Again, but this time it felt different. Our relationship did not suddenly become perfect. He did not call every day. He did not come by every week. But something shifted. I stopped measuring love by frequency. I stopped waiting to be chosen. I filled my days again. Morning walks, books by the window, tea with neighbors. I laughed more. I rested better. I remembered that I was a woman before I was a mother, and that did not lessen my love. It strengthened it. Sometimes he still uses my name, and that is okay, because I finally understand something important. Being mom was never a title someone could take from me. It was something I lived, something I gave, something that remains even in silence. If you're listening to this and you feel forgotten, please hear me. Love does not disappear just because it changes shape, and your worth does not depend on how often someone calls. Sometimes the bravest thing a heart can do is stop shrinking and start standing still, quietly, gently, with dignity. I am still his mother, but more than that, I am still myself. And that was the day I finally learned to breathe again.
Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and listen to my story until the end and tell me which city you're listening from. This way, I'll know how far my story has reached. So friends, my story for today ends here. Please let us know in the comments section what you thought of this presentation. Thank you very much for watching and listening. See you in the next video with the next presentation. Stay connected to our channel until then. Goodbye!